Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you listen, where you listen. It's the Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast. Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast brought to you by Bet Online. Go to betonline.ag, get all your up-to-the-minute odds, late breaking news, and everything you need on sports to get you that ultimate cash prize. Bet Online, where the game starts. It's also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Go to underdogfantasy.com or Underdog Fantasy. Go to the app, put in promo code USCLAFB, and you get a matching bonus up to $100. Madman, excuse my background. As you know, we went right before we was about to get this thing going. Everything just crashed on me. So I'm probably going to be up like a good 45 minutes after this trying to figure out why people only see a green screen and a ceiling fan. The Trojans go into Seattle.
Coach, no, hello, no, how's it
sorry.
going?
I'm all over the place.
I'm teasing you, you know?
Man, it got me. That's why I can't be a quarterback.
Well, first of all, Coach,
how are you doing, man?
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween to you and your family and your beautiful children. It sounds like you guys did some great, some festivities, some trick-or-treating. And frankly, Coach, the green screen is very appropriate for Halloween. So, you're surprising our viewers, with trick-or-treating our viewers. So it makes all the sense in the world.
Are you ready to trick-or-treat next year?
I'm ready. I think, my daughter at that age is at least going to be sort of, I think, interactive enough where we'll certainly, kind of take the stroller out or certainly kind of give out the candy, So I think we're very much looking forward to that. So really exciting. And Coach, it's a double celebration. First of all, happy Halloween. Second of all, the Dodgers are world champions. And we are thrilled to death about that. And what an iconic finish there to be able to close it out in Yankee Stadium, come back from 5-0 down. What a collapse by the Yankees. And we loved every bit of it. And Freddie Freeman being the MVP, and what a phenomenal year, what a phenomenal team. And Coach, I believe it's the beginning of a dynasty here. I think we're looking at the late 90s Yankees. I think that's the kind of run this team could potentially go on. I know that baseball is a fickle mistress, and just in terms of how it's played, but there's really an opportunity to build a dynastic run. And I don't know if you saw this, Coach, but, as a fellow huge Angelino sports fan, Kobe Bryant's, wife, Vanessa, got just this incredible custom apparel from Nike where it said job finished, with the D of the Dodgers and the Kobe Horak logo with the crown. And then the back that said 8 in 24, as an ode to the Dodgers' 8th World Series in 2024. I have been feverishly looking for that piece of apparel all over the place today, Coach. I would kill to have a piece of that apparel. Hopefully they make it available online because that's you can't get more LA than that.
They have to release it, right? They have to release it.
Have to.
There's three celebrations for you, man. I bet you didn't think I knew this, but today's also Diwali.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, look at Coach, baby.
I saw it on the calendar. I saw it on the calendar. I just wanted to make sure it was today, and I did confirm it was today. So Diwali is also today. That's the
look
color.
At Coach.
That's the color festival, right?
Connoisseur of culture. My goodness. Oh well, happy Diwali to you too, Coach. Whenever we sort of talk about Diwali in a more broad context, I'm always reminded of the Office episode where Steve Carell breaks out into that Diwali rap. That was amazing. It always makes me laugh every time I see it.
Yeah. So does that mean there's chicken biryani on the menu tonight?
Yes, sir. Well, but in sort of my defense, my mom's the kind of chicken biryani is sort of default to every night, but it's sort of an extra special, Diwali, type of situation. So, looking forward to that.
That's a good deal. We covered the Dodgers. We covered Diwali. Covered Halloween.
Yes. Now you can go, Coach. Now you can get into to what the passion is. We just got to warm up the crowd a little bit. That's all.
We're headed to Seattle. To play the Huskies. I like this matchup. I think this is a winnable game for the Trojans. The thing that scares me is their quarterback. Huskies quarterback is I'm talking about Will Rogers, their starting quarterback. I like him a lot. I like him because he is a gunslinger. I like him because he kind of takes risk. He'll scramble. He's not a blazer, but he does the frantic scramble. And when he's about to get tackled, he just curls up to a ball. Those types of things. You're like, oh my God, you need to slide. He reminds me of the quarterback from West Virginia. I can't remember his name, and it's going to kill me. But he was on West Virginia a couple years ago. He had all the social media guys. He kind of reminds me of him, but I think he's better. You know, he's not. I'm not saying he's going to go to the NFL and be the first overall pick, but I think right now where Jedd Fisch is with this program, because they had a mass exodus because of transfer portal, because of Calen DeBoer, Jedd Fisch is where he was 2 years ago with Arizona, right? And now's the time to get Washington if you're going to get Washington, because I've said this last year with Arizona. I have a lot of respect for Jedd Fisch, and Arizona's going to be a ranked team, and Washington will be ranked in 2 years. Don't worry, Jedd Fisch will get it right. Right now is the time to get it. I think this matchup is like perfect. I think it's even. It should be a pick 'em in the odds. They're about where they both are in the season. It's kind of lost, but they need to figure out where they want to go. This is a very good measuring stick game for the Trojans to play the Huskies at this point in time in the season to figure out how good you really are. Are you an average team, below average, or are you just above? Well, I don't want to say above average. I don't think they're at the above average. It's either average or below average. This is a good spot for them, and I think this week is a good test. What do you got on this game, Matt, man?
Yeah, Coach, you set it up really well. I think it's a really fascinating game, and to your point, SC's coming in 2.5-point favorite here on the road.
Yeah,
pair of 4-4 teams, right? We got SC at 4-4, we got Washington at 4-4. This is a game, Coach, that I think concerns me for a lot of reasons. And on the flip side, because it concerns me, if USC is able to come out victorious here, I think this is the first data point of progress. We talked a lot about last week and, beat Rutgers, but does that really mean anything? I think this would be, if they were able to come out of this game victorious, this would be kind of that first step towards the famed progress that we're kind of looking for a few reasons. One is, I think Washington comes into this game, Coach, very desperate. It's year one of the Jedd Fisch era. They're 4-4, but keep in mind, they still have to play Oregon and they still have to play Penn State. So this is essentially a must-win situation for Washington at home if they want to get a bowl game year one of the Jedd Fisch era. And Coach, from having played top-tier football, and you've seen kind of different coaching regimes get it started, the value of that bowl game year one. When you can get those 15 to 20 extra practices, you get that additional platform for recruiting. It's just absolutely vital. So when you sort of just holistically kind of set the stage there, Washington is coming out desperate. I think they played quite well, actually, against Indiana last week, considering how high-powered Indiana is, and they were able to kind of stay in that game in Bloomington for 2.5 quarters. So I think holistically, that's my point of departure. But I really have 3 kind of key reasons here, Coach, of what I'm really looking for. Number one, this is now yet again road game for USC versus a familiar foe. And so what do I mean by that? Obviously, USC 0-3 in pure road games, right? The LSU game was a neutral site game at Allegiant Stadium. So now you go to another tough place to play in Seattle. Seattle is a fickle city, right, Coach? We know this. Weather can get variable. The wind gets a little variable. It's a raucous crowd. So there's a lot to sort of go there in terms of, how difficult of a place it is to play. But then, Coach, when you sort of break it down further, Washington's one of the best defenses in the country. They're 10th in the nation in yards per play allowed at only 4.4 yards per play allowed, and 6th in the country in total defense. They're only giving up 247 yards per game. So this is going to be a game where their defense is going to be able to keep them in this game going into the third and the fourth quarter. And what that will do is it's going to force USC to have to be methodical consistently, to be precise, to sort of execute with rigor and with exactness, and for Miller Moss to sort of avoid the big mistake, which is something, unfortunately, he hasn't been able to do on the road. We know about the 2 picks against Minnesota, the huge pick 6 against Michigan, the huge interception against Maryland. So how can Miller Moss avoid that mistake and stay on schedule is something to really look for here. And then, of course, Coach, how does the offensive line hold up late in the game against a very physical defense? We've seen the offensive line have, see some spots of improvement, but when you really need it, when you got to have it in the second half, how much of line of scrimmage integrity are they going to be able to maintain? So this is a road game against a familiar type of foe, because from a defensive standpoint and a physicality standpoint, Washington is actually quite similar to the Michigan team of this year and the Minnesota team this year, both of whom USC has had to play on the road. Number two, Coach, we get back to the Danton Lynn kryptonite, which is, we've talked about it all season.
Coleman,
the 230-pound running back. Exactly. You said it best. Last year with UCLA, twice, he went up against 230-pound running backs. Damian Martinez of Oregon State, Jonah Coleman of Arizona last year came out on an L. This year, obviously, we know about Caleb Mullings. We know about Darius Taylor. Well, guess what? Jonah Coleman has gone from Arizona to now Washington. He's under 6 feet, but he's 229, built like a Mack truck, 785 yards rushing, Coach, good for second in the Big Ten right now, 5 touchdowns, 6.7 yards per carry. So they're going to keep feeding Coleman. If that defense is going to be able to keep you in the game on one side, they're going to keep feeding Coleman on the other side to sort of stay on schedule. How does this defensive front hold up in the third and fourth quarter? That's been the big question against these physical defenses. And I think Jedd Fisch is sort of looking at this with an even greater emphasis to Coleman, because Washington, Coach, 25th in the country in yards per play from an offensive standpoint, but only 101st in the country in terms of scoring offense. So what does that tell you?
No.
They're able to move the ball, but they're not scoring. A lot of possessions stalling in the red zone for them this year. To take kind of a Lincoln Rileyism, they're 2 plays from being 6-2, Coach. They lost 3 games, to Rutgers. They lost by 3 to Rutgers. They missed 3 field goals in that game. And then against Washington State, they lost on the final offensive play, 4th and goal from the 1. So they've had a hard time kind of closing the deal in the red zone. I think Jedd Fisch has been a little too aggressive. I think he sort of brought that Arizona mindset from last year to this year's team, but I don't think he's got kind of the Jimmies and the Joes in the same way that he did last year. So I think Fisch is going to kind of course correct and be a little bit more conservative, go harder with Coleman, and then rely on that defense. So again, that's a very similar recipe that Michigan and Minnesota had. And then third point here, Coach, I think this is the best wide receiver room USC is going to play all year. Maybe this side of LSU, because you've got a 2-headed monster here, Giles Jackson, who was the holdover from last year's team with Penix, and then you've got a Denzel Boston also, with some experience. The two of them have combined for over 90 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns on the season. And when you sort of couple that with where USC is from an injuries perspective in the secondary, Jalen Smith's banged up, Kamari Ramsey's banged up, Covington's banged up, Greedy Vance Jr. is banged up. How does this secondary that sort of banged up and missed a lot of time last week line up with these wide receivers, particularly when your guy, Will Rogers, 72% completion on the year, Coach? So what Kaliak Manis made a couple of really errant throws. There was a lot of unforced incompletions last week against Rutgers. You're not going to be able to get that against this guy with his completion percentage. So how does this secondary hold up? So for all 3 of those reasons, physical defense, they're going to run the ball with a 230-pound back. They've got really good wide receivers and a banged-up secondary, and you're going on the road. This thing is going to be a real dogfight here, Coach. No pun intended. And I think if SC is able to come out victorious because it's such a dogfight, I think we can start seeing some progress here, given these sort of matchup considerations.
So there's actually a matchup that I do want to look at when we talk about this. So there's a glaring stat that popped out that you completely missed. Jonah Coleman only has -8 yards on the year. So the weird part is he has -8 yards on the year, but Will Rogers, when you look, sacks counts as rushing losses, right? He has 139 yards lost. His net's like -67. So when I
Coach,
look
what
at
do you mean that Jonah Coleman's got -8 yards on the year? What exactly do you mean?
He's only lost 8 yards. So when you put everything together, like all out of all this is rushes, the only time he's his total lost yardage is 8 yards.
Oh, okay.
Like his negative plays. His negative plays.
His negative, the totality of his negative plays. Gotcha.
Yes,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
only.
gotcha.
I'm sorry
Yeah,
if that description wasn't very good. I apologize about that. So, but Will Rogers is 139. So that tells me that their front five is not very stout, and they get put in positions where and we know this. Will Rogers gets sacked. He gets sacked a lot. Like it's not surprising. He gets hit a lot, and we see it. We've seen it, and off the plan. But I'm interested to see these young guys against this line. You know what I mean? It's not the best line that you'll ever see, but it's a experienced line, if that makes sense. Like it's a chance for you to play against something better than Rutgers, but it's not as good that you're going to see, but it gives you a legit taste of college football, if that makes sense. So all these young guys that we have coming through, I'm interested to see how they do. And if we do get to the quarterback, I think if we get to the quarterback, that kind of changes up the game a little bit. I wanted to bring up a very interesting point. Jedd Fisch is an offensive guy, which you probably know already, but he always builds his defense first. Just want to go there. We're not going to go down that road, but he builds his defense first and he creates a tough culture. And then he goes from there. As you said, their defense is number 5 and like number 20. Like he's done very well defensive recruiting. And now he's going to go build the offense, like we said, in 2 years. Neither here nor there. I'm also interested to see how good Woody Marks is.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is probably the best defense he'll play or second best defense he'll play compared to Penn State, which in Penn State, he had a fairly good game. I'm not going to take anything, but I'm ready to see the game go through Woody Marks. At some point in time, we have to say we have to win through Woody. And we have yet to see a 30-carry game from Woody. You know what I mean? Not even – I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say through Woody. I would say through this because Quinten Joyner is really good. Just through the running game in general, like a 45-carry game. We have yet to see something like that. And I think we're at the point to where it's like now we need to see it. Even when Woody Marks graduates and we have Quinten Joyner, number 21, the other freshman, the big guy. Come on, Jamal, help me out.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. You're talking about 21, the back. Yeah.
Ryan's not here. Thanks a lot, Ryan, leaving us hanging. He would have had it like that.
I'll pull it up right now. Yeah.
But he's actually pretty good, and the carries that he's gotten in his reps have been pretty good. I think it's time to convert this offense to a Big Ten offense, and we need to start running the ball a little bit more. I think we have to get to a point to where the offense goes through the running game. And you
Brian
mentioned
Jackson.
this. Yep, Brian Jackson. You've mentioned this multiple times, Jamal. And Ryan has also mentioned this. We get to a point to where we run the ball and we get successful and we get one stop and then all of a sudden the running game just goes away. That's a part of the running game. It is what it is. No gain is better than a lost game, and you still get an opportunity. Run it again. Give it another try. Run it the other way. There's multiple things you could do. So my key I want to see from this, though, I want to actually see us win the game. I want to see Quinten Joyner have 15 to 20 carries, and I want to see Woody Marks with 30 carries. Will it happen? I'm being optimistic, and it probably won't happen. But I guarantee you, if that does happen, we score 35 points easily, 100%. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Coach. I mean, it's an interesting point there. I think that it's a really physical Washington defense. I think to your point, it sort of rivals Penn State. I think when LSU is humming athlete for athlete, right, it's comparable there. We'll see something similar against Notre Dame at the end of the year. I think what's going to be interesting is he's going to need balance in this particular game. But are you going to be able to get that balance traditionally or non-traditionally? And so what I mean by that is you're saying, okay, can you turn around and run the ball 20 to 25 times between Marks and Joyner? And run power, run in between the tackles, run zone read, all of those things? Or are you going to be able to create that balance in a non-traditional way? Because keep in mind, even though USC had success running the ball against Penn State, Marks had a big game. So much of that was on misdirection. They used Penn State's over pursuit against them, right? I mean, we saw the the fake reverse, to Joyner. And then remember, there was that flea flicker to Marks that was sort of a broken play. And then there was sort of a variant off of that. Those 3 plays accounted for 75% of SC's rushing yards over the course of the game. So it wasn't like it was this sort of methodical 6-7 yards a carry in a very traditional linear fashion. It was very non-linear with misdirection. So how much is Lincoln going to rely on misdirection? Again, you got to think Jedd Fisch saw that and said, okay, we have to sort of maintain gap integrity defensively. We can't just sort of get out of our lanes and over pursue and sort of over rotate on the edge, because misdirection is going to be a factor. And as a result of that, does USC and Lincoln Riley have the confidence to be able to sort of run the ball in a traditional sense on the road and maintain that balance? I think that's going to be really vital, Coach. And then on the flip side, to your point of the trenches, how does Tompkins, how does Green, how does Fountain, how does Abasari, how do these guys now with additional reps match up against a Washington team? Are these savvy veterans from Washington that may not have the most top-end talent? Are they going to be able to wear these kids out in the third and fourth quarter? And to your point, Coleman's just natural downhill running style and his ability to break that first tackle always is going to take into effect, and this script is going to look eerily similar to that of Minnesota and Michigan? Or is the athleticism of these young kids going to be able to sort of disrupt the line of scrimmage? And then you're really putting Washington in second and long, third and long situations where Rodgers has to rely on Jackson and Boston, but may have to do it too much, gets a little trigger happy, and interceptions could possibly emerge.
Yeah. There's the thing is, we're going into this game with a lot of question marks, right? And we're what, game 8, 9?
Game 9.
Game 9. Fast. It came fast, didn't it? Game 9. We got, after this, we have 3 more games in it.
Yeah. We got the bye, and then we got, the 3-game LA homestand essentially.
Yeah, Nebraska with Dylan Raiola. We got
UCLA and then Notre Dame.
And Notre Dame. And come to speak of it, everybody's talking about taking Notre Dame off the schedule. I don't think you should make that move yet. Notre Dame might help us down the road, and when we get to a place where we don't need to take Notre Dame off the schedule, because right now they look pretty good. So that's a topic for another day. But I think we got a little bit of ahead of ourselves talking about maybe we should get rid of Notre Dame. Maybe we should just learn how to win 10 football games first, and then we can start talking about who we should and shouldn't play and start deleting rivalries. Neither here nor there. So there's a lot of question marks, right? We still have a lot of question marks. We're still asking ourselves a lot of things. But at the end of the day, I think those question marks, according to your theory, right, we're looking at this like a preseason, right? So those question marks are fine, right? They're 2.5-point favorite, which is pretty much a pick 'em. That's anybody's game. But the biggest question mark I have, and the biggest question mark I want to see answered, is I just want to see a complete game, right? I don't want to see, it doesn't have to be perfect. There's no football game that's perfect. But I just want to see, the offense played well, the defense played well, they played well on special teams. Just a complete game, right? Even if we win by 3, like the defense stood, the offense had some blitz, but they still were able to overcome it, and we got through it. And the kicker made his field goals because he started to become an issue too. So, yet to see that. We've seen it once, maybe last year. That's the biggest question mark that I need to be answered. All the other stuff will answer itself over time. It'll answer itself with development, and we're not going to get those answers on Saturday. But the answer we can get is a complete game, and as soon as we see a complete game, I think that's when we start making progress, and then we start getting things rolling forward. Also learn how to win. I don't think they're not learning to win, but that's a spring topic of conversation. You got anything on the complete?
Yeah, no, Coach. I mean, I'm with you there, and I think this is sort of the last test of its kind this season, to your point, because this is the last true road game of the year, right? Yeah. And, you traditionally have 6 at home and 6 on the road. This year, obviously, when you're playing UCLA in the Rose Bowl, you can't really, that doesn't count as a true road game, right? I mean, it's a 50-50 crowd. It's all LA. And then you had the Allegiant Stadium neutral site game. So this is the last true road game of the year. And if you end this season going 0-4 on the road, that's really tough to sort of hang your hat on going into the offseason. This is really an opportunity. You can simulate as much crowd noise as you want in the spring. You can talk all about, sort of finishing and all of that stuff. But for these young kids to be able to go on the road and experience success on their own, I think is going to be really critical. And so I think Washington is going to take the exact same script that Michigan did and that Minnesota did. And that is play really competitive defense, physical defense, make USC take long fields, make Miller Moss be methodical, wait for the mistake, whether that comes in the form of an interception, whether that comes in the form of a holding call, whether that comes in the form of a missed field goal, manufacture possessions, take the game into the second half, and then rely on your big 230-pound back to sort of bring you home, and then pepper in some play action off of that to your big play targets on the outside and see where it all nets out. And so that's going to be the game plan that Washington's going to have. The question is, can USC stand up knowing what that's going to be and sort of disrupt that? And how do you take Coleman out of the game? Well, you take Coleman out of the game by forcing consistent second and long and third and longs. How do you do that? You win your spot at the line of scrimmage on those plays, and you try and create more negative plays. You get Rodgers to sort of unsettle and not be as sure of himself. So that's going to be sort of the chess match that I see, Coach. But given how much Washington, is sort of set up the way Michigan is and Minnesota is, I got to see it on the field. We just haven't seen any evidence that USC in 2024 is able to win a game like this. So I got to see it to believe it. And until I see it, it's hard for me to pick USC to win this game without the evidence to sort of back it up. And so as a result of that, I think it's going to be a wildly competitive game. But I have Washington winning this game 23-20.
Oh, you and I won a prediction. Washington win 23-20.
Yep.
It's rough, and it's a hard sell to go on the road and go 0-4 in the season and not be able to win on the road. I don't think Washington is there yet. And I think Washington is still in the beta phase for the tech people. They're still in the test phase for all the engineering people, and they are still developing for the athletes. Like they're creating a culture, and it's you can see the footprint of it. You can see how tough this team has become. You can see what this team wants to be. But Jedd Fisch doesn't have his players there yet. I just think that SC has a slight edge over them, just a slight edge. I think they have a 2.5 point edge over them. So I think SC does win this game. And I don't think it's going to be a lot. I think it's 28-21. SC wins, gets on the plane, gets back home, and prepares for Dylan Raiola. Good deal. Rolling into that. Big news this weekend on the recruiting front. I'll let you take that lead on that one, Madman. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, Coach, obviously Julian Lewis is the prized USC recruit for the class of 2025, 5-star quarterback, kind of the next great one for Lincoln Riley. We felt really good about his commitment for the better part of a year. He's reiterated his interest and his assurance to the Trojan family that he's going to be here. We don't believe that NIL is sort of an issue, and that he was going to, a few months ago, he announced that he's going to kind of shut down all visits because, he's a Trojan and let's move forward. And so that was sort of the point of departure that we were assuming. Obviously, so much conversation about next year's quarterback and, Miller Moss. And remember in the offseason, Coach, we were talking, is Miller going to be here a year or 2 years? What's going to happen? You got Maeva then, and then you got Julian Lewis. That's sort of the chain of command here in terms of the quarterback succession plan. To some, a big surprise, Julian Lewis, as well as 4-star offensive tackle Carday Smith, who's also a USC commit, both on the sidelines last weekend in Boulder for the Colorado-Cincinnati contest. And now reports are that Julian Lewis is also going to take a visit to Bloomington, Indiana with Kirk Cignetti when Indiana hosts Michigan in a few weeks. So a bit of a 180 here in terms of Julian Lewis, seemingly completely locked in to USC and kind of shutting down any noise or any interest or any visits from anyone else. Now he's starting to sort of take some visits. National Signing Day here, Coach, is inside of 2 months. We're looking at the mid to late December here, and so now there's some concern over whether or not Julian Lewis, in fact, will be a USC Trojan in 2025. And that's sort of the point of departure of this conversation.
So I'm Aaron Rodgers this thing. Relax. RELAX. I don't see it as a big concern. And the only reason why I don't see it as a big concern, I'm gonna take it from experience. I can only speak from experience, and I'm pretty sure there's guys who still do this now that there's unlimited recruiting visits. Why would you go to Indiana? And the reason why I say that, you don't know when that ice cube's going to melt, right? Like it's frozen right now and it's ice cold right now and it looks really good right now in your glass, but you don't know when that ice cube's going to melt, right? So you don't want to be there when all of a sudden that undefeated Indiana team ends up being back to the Indiana team or a competitive Indiana team that wins 8 to 10 games in a 3-year span, right? That's not a threat. The thing with Prime is you don't know how long he's going to be there, and you don't know what he's going to do. And it benefits Julian Lewis because we know Prime shows favoritism towards players. So he'll be his highlight. I just don't see why you would go to Colorado, though. Like, the Big 12 is not a great conference for you to be in, right? It's not. If you go compete, the Big 10 and the SEC is where it's at right now. Go compete. Now, other than that, let me tell you why I say relax. I think he's just taking advantage of visits. I think he's like, I can take as many visits as I want. I want to do all this. These people are calling me. They're sniping me. They want me to go on a visit. Sure, I'll take a visit. I don't like that he's doing it because he's in the middle of the season and it doesn't really show commitment to his team. I'm not really a fan of playing on Friday, rushing to the airport, taking a visit, and going back. You're missing film on Saturday if you do watch film, but that's neither here nor there. The one thing that does worry me about this, Madman, is if Miller Moss decides to come back and Lincoln Riley has to tell Miller Moss to go get in the portal. Because if Miller Moss comes back, you lose 2 quarterbacks. You don't just lose one. You lose 2 quarterbacks. You have to look at the whole foundation. If Miller Moss comes back and Lincoln Riley says we're going with Miller Moss, you lose Mayava and you lose Julian Lewis, and you have to start recruiting quarterbacks for a backup, and you need a quarterback for the next year and the following year to develop a guy. So that's a little scary if Miller Moss does come back. If he does get put in a position where he does have to come back, Miller Moss isn't going to be a Trojan next year. He's probably going to be in a portal. And it's the nature of the business now, but I think a lot of SC people will respect Miller Moss, and it was a business decision more than a personal decision, and it is what it is. So that's where I'm at. And I think SC's tired of paying for his education because I think he's on the second year of grad school, right? Like he's getting kind of expensive. I know NIL's a thing, but I think the university's like, this kid's getting a lot of free education. But for the most part, I don't think it's anything to worry about. I think he's taking advantage of the visits, right? I do. He's been to Colorado twice. Like, how many times does he need to go to Colorado before you can hook him? Apparently, Dion can't recruit, right? He's still committed to SC. We haven't heard anything yet, so I'm not worried about that one. But the signing day still hasn't come yet, so things can't change. But I think he's taking advantage of the visits. Now, if he starts going to Miami, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, we might want to sweat a little bit. But he's not going to any competitors. For what we're seeing, like, we never see Colorado as a future threat. Like, if you start seeing people who are playoff threats, that's what Oregon, if he goes to Oregon, we need to worry. That's when we need to start worrying about him flipping his commitment. But I don't see Indiana as a threat.
Yeah, Coach. I mean, this is sort of fascinating. And it's obviously we don't know what's sort of inside the mind of Julian Lewis or his dad or his family. And, so much of what you said makes a lot of sense. I'm going to break it down this way, Coach. I'm going to say sort of what is the pros of being at USC, but then what are maybe the pros of not being at USC? And I think the pros of being at USC, I think fairly obvious off the field, such a tight-knit alumni network, particularly for athletes that want to sort of build their brands in media, in business. You're in the media capital of the world, or certainly of the Western world, in Los Angeles, and can sort of build out in that particular way. And then, of course, Lincoln Riley and his track record. For all the conversations, coach, that we've had and others about his ability to be a holistic head coach, to be a program builder, to be able to do the NIL, do the trenches, do the recruiting, do everything in totality of what it takes to be a national championship team. No one can question his ability to sort of produce quarterbacks in the NFL. 5 of the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, 16% of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL are Lincoln Riley disciples. 3 of them are Heisman Trophy winners in terms of Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams. 1 of them was a Heisman runner-up. So if you want just sort of that pedigreed path to the NFL, inside track for Heisman consideration, and really sort of that stamp to sort of make it to the league as a quarterback, really hard to argue against Lincoln Riley. It's the logical, obvious choice. And so I think SC kind of sells itself in that way. But here's the thing, coach. Here's the argument against USC. And the first point is the one that you mentioned, vis-a-vis competition. We thought, look, where is Miller Moss here? Has Miller Moss put enough on film to say that he's going to be a legit, high NFL draft pick? No, he hasn't. We've seen the tools that they're there, but there's still sort of questions about arm, about, timeliness of turnovers, about athleticism at the next level. So unless Miller Moss, coach, really blows up these final 4 games, I think there's a very high likelihood that he plays college football next year. So when you've got a Miller Moss that's going to play college football next year, and you've got a Jaden Maeva, who was his conference's player of the year last year, he's already sat out this year. He's not going to want to sit out a second year. And then Julian Lewis is sort of walking into that. Look, there's a scenario where does Miller Moss play the next year? Does Maeva play the year after? Does Maeva blow up enough next year if Miller Moss decides to go pro or decides to go elsewhere, where Maeva goes in 1 year? I mean, there's a real possibility here, coach, that Julian Lewis doesn't see the field until 2027, that both 25 and 26, one will either be a redshirt and the other will be one of these 2 quarterbacks kind of ahead of him to then lead into 2027. Whereas if he goes to a Colorado or an Indiana, the pathway is a lot clearer. He can even potentially start as a true freshman the way a Dylan Raiola can and start getting those reps very early. But I think beyond that, coach, and I think this is sort of a deeper point, what's Julian Lewis's end game? If it's just to sort of make a lot of NIL and make it to the NFL, that's one thing. But if he wants to be an absolute superstar in the NFL, I would argue that it makes more sense to go to an Indiana and a Colorado. And the reason I say that is, look at the landscape, coach, of the NFL superstar quarterbacks of the last 10 years. When you talk about Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, all these guys that were either all pros or MVPs over the last 10 years, none of those guys went to blue blood schools. None of those guys were Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Texas. None of those guys. Those were guys that took non-blue blood programs, perennial 4 and 5 win teams, and elevated them to 9, 10, 11 win teams. And to me, in many ways, that is the greatest preparation for the NFL. On the flip side, you see all of the great Alabama quarterbacks. You see all the great USC quarterbacks. You see the Florida quarterbacks. Like, look at Leinart. Look at John David Booty. Look at Sanchez. Look at Barkley. Look at A.J. McCarron. Look at Mac Jones. Look at even Bryce Young. Look at Tim Tebow. Look at even Trevor Lawrence. Look at Vince Young. Look at Colt McCoy. All of those guys that were on national championship blue blood teams, they never really panned out in the NFL. And as a result of that, it's because you have an advantage at every position when you go to a blue blood. My offensive line, 90% of the time, is better than my opponent's defensive line. My wide receivers, 90% of the time, are better than their corners. My backs, 90% of the time, are better than their backers. I have advantages at every position, and so I'm not necessarily testing myself from a preparation standpoint to the next level. The ultimate preparation is to take a mediocre program and elevate them. The ultimate preparation for a Julian Lewis would be to take a Colorado, put them in the college football playoff, or to quarterback Indiana against the likes of Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and Oregon to really sort of elevate to the next level. Because for as much success, coach, as Lincoln Riley has had taking quarterbacks to the NFL, none of his guys, and Caleb's right at the beginning, so we can't include that, but none of his other guys have like blown up, like Baker, Kyler, Spencer Rattler. These are good quarterbacks. They made it to the league. They've been journeymen from time to time. There's a world where in a year and a half, they're not starting quarterbacks anymore. And then even with Jalen Hurts, coach, who had sort of the best season of any of those guys, how much of that was Lincoln Riley taking a more mature product, 3 years being at Alabama, getting Sabanized, having all the genes, all the competitiveness from there. So Lincoln Riley gets you to the NFL, no question about it. But if you want to be a superstar in the NFL and a superstar quarterback, you probably need to consider Mahomes at Texas Tech, Rodgers at Cal, Lamar Jackson, Louisville, Josh Allen, Wyoming. That's not a coincidence. Matt Ryan, Boston College, Cam Newton, Auburn. That's not necessarily a coincidence that this is probably the best preparation to be a superstar in the NFL.
I would say that Aaron Rodgers team was pretty good, though. They had a lot of dudes on that team.
Cal isn't, a perennial blue blood, right, Coach? He, to your point, you can sort of catch lightning one particular year, sure. But if you just look at the landscape of the quarterbacks that are all pros, MVPs over the last 8 or 10 years, the vast majority of them went to these schools. The only exception, Coach, was Burrow at LSU. But the argument still holds there, because if you are going to go to a blue blood, then you better just crush every record. Because if you're that good and the receivers around you and the weapons around you are that good, you should just obliterate the record books, which is exactly what Burrow did. Burrow had the greatest college quarterback season in the history of the sport before going to the Bengals. But if you're just, a guy who's playing on an elite team and just kind of having them kind of chug along, I don't know if that's the best preparation for the NFL. So that's the lens, I think. That's what the Signettis are selling. That's what I think Coach Prime is selling and saying, hey, look, my son, Lincoln's got a football factory here. My son's probably going to be the number one pick for this reason. He's had to elevate this team to 8, 9, 10 wins with no offensive line. That the NFL is going to look at that and say, man, that was really good preparation for the next level. I believe Shedeur is going to be the number one pick in the draft here, Coach, and Travis Hunter shortly thereafter. So I think that's where it becomes a very interesting debate. No one is questioning Lincoln Riley's ability to be a quarterback guru, but what is the best education, in today's NFL to get ready for that next level?
The only thing is the NIL. If he's about the NIL, then no shot.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm just being realistic. It's crazy that it comes down to that, but if it's about the NIL, no shot. He has no shot at making that happen. Neither one of those schools. But right now, I'm going to stay optimistic in this. I don't know about you, but I'm going to stay optimistic. I think he's just taking advantage of the visits.
Sure.
I could be wrong. I could be 5,000,000% wrong. But I think he's just taking advantage of the visits. And I think hopefully, once the dust settles and we get to the end of right before Christmas for signing day, he signs. He's locked in. Now, the thing that we need to talk about, and I don't know when we talk about this, is how this new NLI thing works. Because it's not gone, but it's gone, but it's not gone, because they still do sign something because they need to be held under contract, but it's gone. But it's a bunch of lawyer talk that I don't understand. It's above my head. And I think I need to dig deeper into it before we do have that conversation. So, yeah, I'm not worried. I'm okay. Like I said, if he goes to Oregon, now we need to worry. If he's in LSU, Texas, and he starts going to the big logos, I'm like, this is NIL now. This is they're matching offers. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna stay optimistic. Relax, guys. He's taking advantage of the visits. He gets to take as many as he wants, and he's taking as many as he wants. He's visiting places that he probably will never get to go in his lifetime. Right? There's place. Have you ever been to Bloomington?
I have not.
You know what I mean? Like, I've been to Indiana, I've been to South Bend, and I've been to Michigan City and all the like random places, but I've never been to Bloomington, right? And
no, I have not. Yeah.
Probably never will go to Bloomington in our lifetimes. Like, it's not the end of our world if we don't go to Bloomington, Indiana. Like, it's not very high on our list of goals to achieve. So I think he's just taking the visit. Let's relax and let's just settle down. The big logos will worry me more than these schools that he's going to right now.
No, fair enough, Coach. And I think, you were recruited at a very high level. So certainly your expertise matters here in a significant way. I think the only thing I would say is to that, it's just interesting, the debate, right? Because I think there is a side to another story, because if you're trying to become a superstar quarterback in the NFL and you're playing that long game, and to your point, very few players, student athletes, as well as their parents are playing that long game. You know, if you're truly kind of saying, what's it going to take to be a superstar Hall of Fame quarterback and make hundreds of millions of dollars, you're willing to give up the $500,000. You know, like if school A gives me $1.2 million a year, school B gives me $500,000 a year, you're kind of saying, look, I'm willing to give that up to kind of set it up. Where if I go to an Indiana and I don't have the same throwing windows as I would in Ohio State, and I don't have the same time back in the pocket as I would at Michigan, or I don't have the same weapons that I would, you know, at an Oregon, that to me is, and then you can sort of elevate that type of team to 9-10 wins, a fringe playoff berth. That to me is kind of the ultimate education to be a great quarterback at the next level. So how much of that is going into the equation versus just visits? It's an excellent point, and we'll see it all shake out for sure.
You see Thrill popped in here and he popped out?
Yeah.
I was going to put him on. He got lucky. Yeah, man. We're okay, guys. Let's not panic. I will say this. The only thing that scares me about things like that is that if the ice cube melts, that's the only thing. And they can melt at any time in Colorado. It can melt at any time in Indiana. And maybe you still are good, but you're not as competitive, and it's not fun when you're not winning. Totally. That's the only thing. That's the only thing I would say. You got anything else on that?
No, always a great one, Coach.
Yeah, I think we put a good one in the books. Got enough timing. I feel like you're going on the other side of town now. That's why Thrill popped in here.
We're double dipping tonight, Coach. We're double dipping.
Thank you for squeezing in late. I appreciate you for that one.
No, thank you for everything, as always.
Yeah, I've totally forgot about trick-or-treating. Guys, we put another one in the book. If you guys love anything about sports, if you want to see the Madman more than once, go to LAFBnetwork.com. We have the Trojans, Rams, Chargers, and the other team across town. We also got fantasy with our guys, Amr Desai and Tad Desai, with the Desai guys on fantasy. That's LAFBnetwork.com. Also, don't forget to go to betonline.ag. Don't forget to visit Underdog Fantasy app and go to underdogfantasy.com. Promo code USC LAFB. Man, we put another one in the books. Victory Sunday.
Victory Sunday.
Victory Sunday. I'll see you guys on Sunday for Victory Sunday. You guys know how it goes. Live free. Fight on.